Hey guys, so the book that I read was The Killer Angels by Shaara, and I'm going to go ahead and show you that book on my computer screen. I actually read this book on my phone and listened to it some. I read it cover to cover, every word for every page, and I don't typically like to listen to books, but this one was really nice to listen to. The narrator really added a little something to it when he was describing the battles, and it made it more engaging for me. So this book is about Gettysburg and that battle. It's really cool the way it's broken up. It's broken up into days, and then each chapter, you would say, is covering a different person or from their perspective. I love that about it. I like the way it was sectioned off, kind of, and it made it, I hate to say realistic because it is real, but it really puts you there. It makes you feel like you're actually standing there with them. I would highly recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I'm not typically into books like this. It was definitely outside of my comfort zone. I don't love to read books about wars because I find them gruesome, and so I don't typically read them. However, I'm very thankful that I did, and it's made me realize I think I need to give them another shot. So I would recommend this book. I would not recommend it for really anyone below college. That's just out of caution. It does give some details and could be very difficult, in my opinion, for even some high schoolers to read. Definitely not a book that I would read with elementary students. It's something that would be good for you to read as an educator and encourage your students to read as they get older. I think it's important for us to read books like this because it tells us about the past, and we can kind of relate better to people who lived then, and I think that's something we need to do a little bit more of. So as I started reading this, I started thinking about my lesson and how I wanted to do it, and it was important to me to kind of follow what I've been doing. I've already done some lessons on slavery and the Civil War, so I didn't want to go that route. So I started looking at standards, and there were two. The grade 5, standard 11 and 12. Standard 11 is Civil War based, but the one I really want to focus on is where it says the events at the conclusion of the war, because that's what this is. And then 12 is it's on the Reconstruction era. So that's really where I wanted the meat of my lesson to come from. Prior to the lesson that I built, my students would be reading, I'm checking my notes. Dark Sky Rising, Reconstruction, and Dawn of Jim Crow by Henry Louis Gates Jr. So they're going to read this prior to the lesson. They could be reading it while we're studying Civil War. This could be a separate thing, but I want them to have this content knowledge before we start the lesson. And so as part of these lessons, I'm going to have my kids split up into groups, and we will be reading a short reading off Khan Academy, and it's on like Jim Crow. That's a lot of what that book is about. So we're gonna read that in groups, and after they read that, they're gonna write 3 things that they gained from the reading. They are also going to be looking at maps that were from before the Civil War, during, and after, and then doing some compare and contrast. What's similar, what's different, what can you tell me about them? Those are things that I really wanted my students to be looking at, and how the war affected the maps. Well, what about territories and things like that? Also, my students are going to listen to some songs from the Civil War. I found them on YouTube. And they are going to listen to those. And while they're listening, we are going to be writing letters to veterans to thank them for their service. And this is going to be a service project for them. I think it is a great opportunity for our students to really get in touch and engage with our country, and I think that's really important. So I would get in touch with our local VA and just kind of work that out so that my students could have someone personally to write to, and ideally they would have a face, a picture, so that they could have a face with a name, and they could really know a little bit about what that people went through. And I think that by doing those things, it would make what they're studying more real. And I think far too often as teachers, when we're working with social studies, we let them become stories, like they're fiction, when they're not. And so my goal would be for my students and myself to really key in on that fact, is this is real. These are real people. And I think this is going to be a great lesson, and I look really forward to finishing it up. Thank you so much.